In today's episode, boss makes me rush my work, so I have other plans. Tell me to hide period products in order to not offend male coworkers? Consider it done. The end to a free decade of Netflix. So let's get started. Boss makes me rush my work, so I have other plans. I used to work for a holiday company a few years ago, alright company, but the management team I was working for left something to be desired. I worked in entertainment, but in a technical role. Essentially, I was in charge of lighting and sound for a mid-size, up to 2,000 people, venue. Most of the year it was a one-person job, with a few bits of help from the other entertainment staff, but there was one point in the year that was really challenging. The company I worked with produced 3 finale event weekends, where competitions that were run over the course of the year on the multiple sites would have their grand finals, a big celebration, etc., and were generally a great excuse for us to have a few drinks after a lot of chaos. The usual routine was that a few staff from other sites would come to us, help with the prep and run the weekend with us. I would normally get a couple of people to help me set up the tech that was coming in, as the budgets were huge and the demands were ridiculous. This particular year my manager took a leave of absence, and I was left with the assistant manager, AM. He was, for want of a better phrase, lacking in the management department and was desperately trying to prove himself to be either the boss or manly. Personally, I think that it was because his job was singing and dancing. He took every chance he could to show he was a man. Most dancers I know don't do this, but he was a special case. Now my job was the closest thing to manly in the department, think rigging, lifting things, technically heavy, etc., so I was a target of his quite a few times. Anyway, just before this all kicks off, he tells me that he's not giving me anyone to help me this year set up. Not much I can do about this, so I realize I've basically got the work of 3 people to do within a week, with no room for error. So I spend about 20 minutes in our shared office working out a schedule for myself, so that I had enough time to do everything. It meant that was working stupid hours, but it left me with time for food breaks, etc., and I was young, so I thought, who cares? Now, if you've ever done any kind of theater or events work, you'll know that one of the toughest things to do is find time to work on stage while people want to rehearse. I'd even factored this in, but this meant that I was taking breaks while the casts were rehearsing. I'd worked out my schedule with the choreographers in mind, so that every day bar one I would take my breaks differently to the dancers, so I could work on stage when they weren't there. That one day I was taking my break at the same time was Wednesday. So Wednesday comes and I'm well ahead of schedule. My AM walks up to me and lets me know that he thinks I'm behind. I explain that I'm not, in fact I'm far ahead and things were going well. He disagrees and tells me that he needs me to work through my dinner break on stage, and that I would get some time later when he and the dancers were rehearsing. He wanted me to do something about lighting, I think, but with the majority of the equipment I had hired not coming to the next day, it was pointless me doing anything that break. I tried to explain that I had plans, etc., for my break, but it didn't matter. He put his foot down and was adamant I worked as long as I could. When I brought up the whole not having a break in 6 hours thing, he claimed that he would give me a break when the dancers returned in an hour or so, but until they started rehearsing I was to continue working. I was young and slightly intimidated, so I felt I didn't have a choice, so reluctantly I agreed. I was mad as hell, tired and hungry, and had been working my butt off to get this event ready on my own. I set myself up doing pyro instead, as it was a job I was going to do Friday, as the last job, and it wasn't what he asked me to do, so it was a little passive-aggressive victory for me. I watched the clock as his and the dancers' 1-hour break turned into a 2.5-hour break. I'd done my work, it's amazing how motivated you can be when you're angry, and was waiting for them to arrive. I was about to head out for food myself when he saunters in and asks where I'm going. When I tell him that I'm done with the jobs I can do on stage, and I'm getting food, he stopped me and demanded that I stay for his rehearsal to operate the music for him. I was furious, tired, annoyed, and frankly lost for words. I walked out, got some food, took 20 minutes for myself and came back to a ** locking from him. Words cannot describe how useless this guy was. Anyway, flash forward to the Friday and my act of malicious compliance. I completed my work early on Thursday and so was ready to go. I was already ahead and my extra time on WEDS really helped. He had insisted that I was there at 9 a.m. that day ready to go and I was. So I sat in the office for a while, grabbed a snack or two and waited for someone else to come in. No one else did for another hour. He'd given the rest of the department an extra lie-in but not told me. Fine. Not an issue. He eventually wanders in, asks what I'm up to and I give him a vague answer. And here is where the malicious compliance comes in. He insisted that I stay around all day to get ready for the opening evening. I wasn't allowed to leave site and he expected me to be either working on the events or in the office. When I asked about when I can have lunch so I can plan my time, he told me he would tell me when and if all the work was done. The head of entertainment and the head of the business were coming around that afternoon, so he wanted to make a good impression. I didn't comment but made a plan. After doing my general safety checks and after making sure everything was working as it should be, a grand total of 30 minutes work, I sat in my office chair, grabbed his newspaper and read it. Over and over. I purposely sat in my chair doing sod all. He didn't specify what I was meant to be doing in the office, so I took it as a time to relax and watch a bit of Sky TV. He doesn't notice me for about 3 hours as he's running around trying to do his job, and the bits he forgot, that was until he heard the management team were on their way. He comes over asking what I'm up to. I tell him that I'm doing as he asked me to stay in the office. He told me to get the venue ready or be in the office. So that's what I'm doing. Starting to panic, he told me to go and do something for the events, to essentially look busy. It went something like this. Have you done the lights? Yep. What about? I've got nothing to do. Really, nothing. I've been ahead of schedule all week. But how? Remember that evening you told me to work when I didn't need to? Well, the work I was going to do now I did then. So I have nothing to do now. Bob, head of entertainment not real name, is on their way down now, so you need to make sure you're doing something. Okay, will do. I put his paper down and started neatening my desk and filling out my timesheet. You know that kind of busy work where you look like you're doing something, but moments later I was back watching TV. If he wants me to be in the office doing something, I will do. He didn't specify what. A few minutes later the head of entertainment walks through the door. Seeing me watching TV, he asks me what I'm doing. I fill him in on the situation with me being ahead of schedule earlier in the week, being ordered by AM to work extra time on the WEDS and working nearly 10 hours straight by order of the AM without an authorized break. I fill him in the AM's antics overall and I tell him that this put me well ahead of schedule, and that today the AM called me in earlier than everyone else and told me to be out there getting things ready or to be in the office. I wasn't allowed to leave the office and had nothing left to do, so I was waiting for instruction, essentially being on call for the AM if he found me any extra work to do. I pointed out at that point the hours that I'd worked that week and that as I was effectively on call for the AM I was recording each and every one of the hours I was sitting in the office that morning as work, pushing at least 80 predicted hours for that week and rising if he kept me there till the end of that day without a break. As one of the slightly better paid members of staff, there it was costing the company a fair bit just to have me sit there and watch TV. Bob was annoyed. Really annoyed. Annoyed that the AM had broken various employment laws, forced me to work extra time, and had me effectively now being paid to sit in the office and do nothing because the AM couldn't manage his team right. He smiled at me and thanked me for my hard work and told me to grab a long lunch while he chatted with the AM. The AM huffed and puffed and was clearly in a foul mood, but ignored me for the rest of the weekend, thank God. Turns out he basically had his ass handed to him about the legality of what he had done, how I could theoretically have grounds to sue the company, and how he needed to treat his staff better without costing the company a fortune in hours. I must have done something right as a few months later the AM tried to threaten to leave the company if I wasn't transferred to another site. He was told to quit. Meanwhile I got a few cushy jobs and a nice manager afterwards. Tell me to hide period products in order to not offend male coworkers? Consider it done. Background: I work in a fast-paced healthcare environment where every minute counts, and I have both male and female coworkers on my shift. We have lockers with opaque doors where we're allowed to store our things. When I'm in the office area, I leave mine unlocked for easy access, and I've started keeping a box of tampons in my locker. I've told my female coworkers if they're in a hurry and need a tampon, they're welcome to just open my locker when it's unlocked and I'm in the office and take one, no problem. I got called into my boss's office the other day because a male coworker of mine complained that me keeping tampons in my locker was disgusting, and he hated that he could see the box whenever my locker was opened. My boss, a male, told me that some men were really sensitive to this type of thing, and that I should try hiding them in a different type of box, so I wouldn't offend my coworkers. I asked what the point was because my coworkers would see someone reaching into a crackers/Pop-Tarts, etc. box and taking out a tampon instead of food anyway. My boss got all huffy and told me that it was for the best, and I needed to do it. Well, fine. I made a cover for my tampon box that said Mother Earth's Bloody Nutrients Bars, with extra gooey, nutritious filling, with a photo of a bloody bathtub, and placed it on the box. That was 2 days ago, and I saw the male coworker open my locker, trying to be sneaky, and he paled when he read the box, got all angry, and I received an email from my boss that my cover wasn't funny and that I need to take it down. So I emailed our HR person a copy of the email, as well as a summary of what happened and photos of the lockers, the box, and the cover. I also suggested that the male coworker sit somewhere where he didn't have a direct line of sight to my locker if it really offended him so much. She thought it was freaking hilarious and said I followed my supervisor's instructions, and so I was fine. Nothing else has been done yet, and I'm mostly angry that my time was spent on something as stupid as this and not on patient work. The end to a free decade of Netflix. Between 8 and 10 years ago, I received an email welcoming me to Netflix. That was a bit concerning since I hadn't signed up, so I contacted the company. They told me someone must have accidentally used my email when they created an account. Our last names were the same and our first initial. I said, "Oh, no problem, you must have additional contact information for them besides my email. Could you please remove my email from the account and let them know so they can fix?" Well, immediately that was a big problem for Netflix, and no, they couldn't remove the email because it was the only one they had for the account, and how did they even know that it was mine? I said, "Give me your email address and start talking. I will email you the words as they come out of your mouth." That wasn't good enough for proof somehow. More likely I was in the other person's Gmail account asking to not have Netflix. What they finally ended up doing was changing the account password so that when the customer went to log back and they wouldn't be able to and would need to do a password reset by calling Netflix, and then they would confirm the email address. I kept getting Netflix emails, so that didn't work. I called again, same again, didn't work. I changed the password several times myself because I could use the forgot password function and get an email to reset it, that didn't work. I don't know how they kept getting the new password without updating an email address, and I didn't really care at this point. For the last 8 to 10 years I have had Netflix on everything I own. I have signed in on hotel televisions, used it on my phone, my Spoxes, my kid uses it. I only ever signed in under family and told him to do the same. The entire history in family is us. The other logins, Fred, Softy, and Lila, accumulated history. I would occasionally look because, curious. Never did a single new show appear in the family watch history that wasn't because of me. Well, I woke up this morning to an email from Netflix telling me that this email address was no longer associated with that account, and if I had any questions, etc. Thank you, Softy. It has been an amazing run, and I am not sure why you gave me free Netflix for the last decade, but I think you are amazing. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.